we thought that we honestly thought we had a couple more minutes before we had to start streaming, but here we are. Thank you for joining us today. It's a bit of a short staff, as they say, little people staff. It's just me and Bobby. Bobby, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, it's Bobby.
All right, Bobby. So, just to kind of ease into things, how's it feel? We're back in the Yolo Braintrust hot seat. We are back. This is our second podcast since we took a year and a half long hiatus. Anything in particular you wanna talk about while I'm getting this set up on the other screen here?
Hey, it's Bobby.
That's all you got.
Hey, it's Bobby.
So, just before we continue, I actually do think there's something that we have to kind of figure out, right? You were undergoing a bit of an upheaval with things, and I don't know. Should we talk about that here, or should we not?
We can. You'll maybe begin getting some different content. It's not that matters. I don't think there's anybody watching. So,
but do you want to talk about any of the specifics of the situation, or is this something that you want to kind of leave hanging in the air for the time being?
I think we'll let it leave hanging. I think we'll let it leave hanging. Stay tuned if you're a little YOLO brain truster. Stay tuned, and we'll get into it.
Right on. So what we initially intended to do this episode, what I intended to do, I'm a little bit of a showrunner here, is we wanted to do an episode.
Travis is the showrunner. I'm the show walker. I'll tell you that much.
Yep, I think that's a pretty good way to describe the dynamic here.
And Shaw, may rest in peace, is the show crawler.
He was the Shah of the show. Ironically,
he's not dead, by the way. If anyone's concerned, he's not dead.
He was just deposed, and he's been replaced by the Ayatollah, who wasn't able to make it for his first episode.
And he's also sleeping. That's why he's resting in peace. He's sleeping. He was deposed, and now he's taking a nap because he got deposed.
So it turns out, first of all, just as a quick aside, it turns out this is episode 26. Today we're gonna be talking to the men in the room. All right, so I'm trying to update some of this stuff on this other monitor here.
The men. What about the ladies?
They listen. Who sang the song "Girls Run the World"?
Beyonce.
It was Beyonce. All right.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Famously Beyonce.
Famously Beyonce, and that's what I knew. But I just sometimes you're wrong, sometimes you're right, and so I just want to be on the safe side. So this is really an episode for the men out there, and I think we're probably going to end up having to run it back with Shah, anyways, because I think he's a very crucial part of this dynamic because he's very much kind of the salt to our caramel. I think I have that dynamic right, where. Yeah. He's very opposite us in some ways, and he's a couple years younger than us too. So it kind of I think it adds a real kind of
Shaw's a couple years younger. He's 53 and we're 56.
Well, maybe you are. I'm the good old 5'9". I'm almost over the hill, as they say. They say over the hill no longer 50. It's when you turn 60.
Over the hill.
So the original iteration, it is so hard to try to type out the tags and stuff while we're talking here. But Bobby, actually, yeah, let me finish this off and then we'll start with the tags. So there was I like to imagine that the original iteration of the podcast.
You like to imagine.
I like to imagine, just like John Lennon, dare to imagine. Steve Jobs maybe said that. I like to imagine that the original version of the stream had a little bit of kind of antithesis to some of the manosphere stuff that was going on, and kind of like, you know, the red pill, blue pill, stuff like that. You know, not intentionally, but just, you know, we were kind of just mocking the whole dynamic, right? That was a lot of what our shorts and stuff were. And so, you know, you jump ahead to 2025. The relationship to those sorts of things are very different. I really wish I had all these tags written, so I didn't have to try to do both of these things at once. Let me start from the top. So this podcast we started in 2023, and at the time,
we started the podcast in 2023. Yeah, I just want to double check. Can we run that back? Run that back?
In 2023, we started the podcast. And of course, we took a bit of a 1.5-year hiatus. But the first iteration of the podcast, one of us was going to lull into the red pill sphere of things. And if you guys remember, in 2022 and 2023, there was this guy who hit the scene. His name was Andrew Tate, and he had a brother, Tristan Tate, and he had a whole crew of people, one of which was a wizard. And that doesn't really get talked about, but supposedly if you bought like their courses or whatever, one of the guys involved was like a big bearded like guy who cast protection spells or something. I'm a little unclear on what his relationship to the rest of them was and how he played into it, but they did have a wizard. And he's on top of the world. And you know, of course, you know, this has gone back since time immemorial, but, you know, there's always been this thing of men who kind of have trouble finding their way. And sometimes, you know, they end up maybe taking some lessons that aren't actually that good. And, you know, maybe it hurting them more than it helps. And at the time, you know, in 2023, one of us was kind of maybe one of the three co-hosts here, I would say, was kind of, you know, kind of outside the periphery of that current sphere of men's advice, as were a lot of people, you know, who were in their 20s, late teens, maybe some people in their 30s even, at that moment. And it's something that's changed a lot.
Travis.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something, Travis? When do you think? Because we talk about, you know, men go in their own way.
Big tab. That's one you don't hear anymore. I was thinking about that one the other day.
Yeah, men go in your own way. You ever go on that subreddit? You ever follow that?
No, not at all.
I've been following, you know, off and on since the beginning, really. You know, the beginning of that subreddit of that kind of the men's rights stuff. Because what people don't realize is the manosphere. The manosphere is a post-pandemic kind of thing, or maybe just like the pandemic kind of started it off, and you get these manos. I'm not going to say any names, but we all know who I'm talking about. You know, these manosphere celebrities. We think of them as you know, rising during the pandemic, during lockdown, when everyone was watching.
And it was
TikTok
towards the end of it, but yes, absolutely, for sure.
And
I just want to say real quick, thank you for joining the chat, Evan. It's been a long time since we've seen you. Glad to see you here, and keep going. So this has happened during the pandemic.
During the pandemic, but before the pandemic, you know, it didn't just pop out. You know, you didn't just fall out of a coconut tree to quote the former next president of the United States. You didn't just fall out of
the next president to who almost was.
Yes. You didn't just follow. So these things had a tie, and then back then I remember the Reddit posts. A lot of the men going their own way, right? Were 40-year-old divorcees, 44-year-old divorcees, middle-aged. They lost the house, they lost the kids. You know, Stacy took the kids, and now they're men going their own way. And that's how they cope with it. But you know, a lot of it, you know, I guess the question you have to ask yourself, and I'm asking you, Travis, is when is it too old to be kind of a manosphere guy? Like, I can see if you're a 16, 17-year-old kid, you know, 18-year-old kid, maybe early 20s, getting manosphered. You know, if you don't have a lot of luck, if you don't have a lot of relationships in your life, or, you know, if you had a girlfriend and she dumped you, she left you, you know, I could see 2023 maybe. But how late do you think
How old is too old for the manosphere?
How old is too old?
That's a really good question, and I remember the late 2000s, right? I'm very much a kid of kind of who kind of had his first exposure to the internet, and we're getting a little bit of audience feedback here. 23 and 7 months. I think that's how it should be for sure. And welcome to the current 4 viewers we have. I think back in that era when I was first exposed to the internet, the late 2000s, early 2010s, is you had an equivalent that was pretty much the pickup artist spheres, right? I remember there was like this guy in like a fuzzy hat or something like that. Do you know his name? I think a lot of people know who he is, and some people know his name. I don't remember it. But you had a lot of pickup artist stuff. That was kind of the equivalent at the time. And a lot of those guys were kind of older than they should have been. If I had to guess, back then, those guys were probably in their 30s and 40s. And so it's like what you're saying. Back then it maybe had a bit of an older character to it. Maybe guys who are embittered from divorces and stuff like that. But, something that I've kind of noticed as time goes on is there's a bit of like an age collapse with the internet, where there are a lot of people who are way too old to be in the communities that they're in, and that seems to be relatively that seems to be something that just happens a lot. A lot of 40 and 50-year-old men in online video game and anime communities. And if you're one of those guys, no shade to you. I'm sure you're a great guy. And if you like and subscribe to this podcast, then you're definitely not included in this. You're a different kind of guy, and we salute you for engaging with our content. But to me, it's like it's definitely geared towards younger people. But I feel like there's really no upper bound anymore. The internet's kind of gotten rid of some of those informal barriers that would be normally, that would normally exist for age.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting little bit of insight from our friend Evan here. In my country, Tinder roaches are a pretty popular scam.
Travis, I believe that says Tinder coaches.
Oh, I thought it was like a lot lizard thing. I totally misread that. I'm thinking of like that particular kind of the UK exclusive kind of woman where they're really kind of caked up in the fake tan and the heavy, the way overdrawn eyebrows, living in council housing or whatever it is over there, just hitting on young men. I thought it was like kind of like a less sterile version of cougars.
Is Evan
coaches.
from? Do you know if this chatter is from the United Kingdom? If you are, top of the morning to you. Top of the
I don't know
morning
for
to you
sure,
if you have a
but
bit of an
that is
accent.
my
Top
that
of the
is my
morning to you.
sense. Yeah, Tinder coaches for sure. Tinder coaches. There's a lot of bad spheres of advice out there, and there was a story I gave previously on the podcast. I don't know if I should be telling it right now.
Yeah.
But
Give your full name and social security number, by the way.
But there's a lot of. Is that Poofter Shah here? You mean
Also, by the
Prester
way,
John? Poofter Shah.
Andrew Tate.
I see what the question is.
Right
Shah is not currently here. This conversation was originally designed to have him in the room. And unfortunately, he had a kind of a last second obligation take hold, and so we're actually missing a very core component to this conversation. But I think that we're going to strive through it nonetheless. But anyways, getting back to your point, I think it's definitely a little embarrassing. It's definitely a little embarrassing to kind of get into that stuff. I would say post, let's say 25, but I don't think there's a proper age ceiling on who gets into that modern day manosphere stuff. Where were you going with it?
I was just wondering. I was just wondering what you thought. Because I think it's I can see, younger kids, younger men, 18 to, especially younger than 18, getting into it. I remember being 20, 23, thinking I was super old, thinking I had to have everything figured out. Graduating college and thinking, I'm an adult now. I'm a real adult now. I got to have everything figured out. And I can see if you don't have everything figured out. I had everything figured out for a little bit, and I can see, how if you don't have everything figured out, you can kind of go down those paths. You kind of think that you got to have everything figured out, at that age.
Right,
So
for sure.
this helps you figure things out.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it was more like in my teenage years. I'm in puberty, and it's like, you're really excited to be at this age where you can meet women, and date and stuff, and so you're trying to get a heads up over all the other people your age, and so you get some bad advice, and all of a sudden you're sitting across from a girl in one of your classes who's who you find to be very attractive, and she's being polite, and she introduces herself, and she asks about your name, and all of a sudden you're saying, I don't speak to women unless they don't have a boyfriend. And she looks at you, and she says, what? I don't think I caught your name there. And you mutter to yourself, I don't talk to women unless they don't have a boyfriend. And she's like, she looks at you politely, I think kind of in disbelief that you did this in a conversation, and then you silently turn around and walk away, and you avoid communicating with her ever again. Not not that that's ever happened to me. But as such, so now that we're kind of set up here,
Here's
yeah.
a good
And
chat.
listen, I just want to say real quick, just a second ago, we had 6 viewers split across both the channels. And we were getting some really insightful comments that I think really is really what we're aiming for. One of our chatters here said, I've never held a woman's hand. And another chatter said, women scare me. And I think this is really it. We're speaking to an audience here. And so, yes.
And that's what I want to touch on is that.
And I
is that
do want to finish
chatters,
the point after, but yeah.
that chatter's comment of women scare me. Now the question is we do have a chat coming in 2 channels. Yes, we are also streaming. We are simulcasting on twitch.tv/undeadperson.
That's correct.
It is a simulcast, so if you prefer twitch.tv, up over youtube.com, you can go to twitch.tv/undeadperson.
YouTube.
YouTube. So I want to touch on that chatter's spot there. About women scare me, right? That comment. How old do you think? How old is too old to have that thought, right? That women scare me. Ooh. I think 26. I think that's a little too old.
I mean, you mean as like just a generalized sentiment? I mean,
like being scared to talk to women, kind of thing. That general sentiment of that joke of oh well, women scare me. I'm just gonna stand in the corner, kind of thing. I think I think you got to grow out of that at some point too.
Yeah. So here's a real life hack. I think is understanding that everyone's scared of everything, all the time to varying degrees, and people have a tendency to get scared of stuff that they shouldn't be scared of, that they normally wouldn't be scared of, and being scared of women in a particular situation, even if you're in your 30s, even if you're in your 40s, not a big deal. That's something that happens, especially in like individual cases. As a generalized sentiment, however, I think everyone's different. For some people, maybe who don't get as much exposure to women, maybe a little older than, would you say 25, 26? But I would say definitely at that point you should have had enough exposure to women in your life to where, you know, if you do get nervous for whatever reason, it's not just because they're a woman, and it's because, you know, maybe you're just like a generally anxious person or the setting or something like that.
Yeah, I think if you're like 25,
I remember
especially if
you,
you're-
Tim.
If you're something like 27 or 28, and you know, you still live maybe at your dad's house, and you know, you just sit around playing Magic the Gathering, you know, with a bunch of the same friends, and you're not banging abroad on the daily basis, you know, blow your brains out. I'm just joking, in a video game.
And
you know?
he is joking. That's a very pointed joke, and I want to be clear that that's. I think when you say stuff like that, it's a little damaging to the sincerity that I think this conversation should hold.
But you know, there's a lot of people who do think that, who do think that is and not a joke. And I think, you know, different people they do different things at different ages. And something that I've seen and something that, you know, you start to learn, at least maybe for me, taking a little bit, is that, you know, you can just do things, and you know, you can always make a change as long as there's breath, you know, in your lungs. You can always make a change. You know, there's been a lot of time where you know, I thought
Positive.
oh man,
Let's be clear.
Positive
We're not
changes.
talking about the joke you made. We're talking about
I mean,
improving
you
your
can't make
situation.
you can make a negative change, but that's a negative change. Why you don't want to
You
do
don't
that.
want to do that. Exactly.
There's been a lot of times in my life where I've said to myself, you know, I wish I had done X. I wish I've gotten into X. You know, like I wish I'd gotten into this sport, or I wish I, you know, got into this hobby. And you know, it's too late though for me to do that, and that's not true. You know, you got to start to learn. I'm starting to learn that it's not true. You know, Redfin, the guy who did LMFAO, the guy who did Party Rockin'.
Is that his name?
I think his name is like Redfin or
I think it's Redfoo.
Redfoo. Sorry, you know what Redfoo is doing right now? You know what Redfoo's job is? His
Is he a
career
wizard?
is right now? Redfoo is currently a professional tennis player.
Oh, really?
He became a professional tennis player at the age of like 44.
I don't know that.
Yeah, he got into tennis in like his 40s, and now he's a professional tennis player.
Folks, and as a quick aside, just, you know, while we're in the swing of things here, if you're watching, we recently put up a short a few minutes before we start streaming, telling everyone that we're live. If you would, if you have a free device, give it a quick like, so that way we can spread the good news to people. But yeah, exactly. This is a very open world, and that kind of cuts to the heart of, you know, why I wanted to have this conversation. If you see Shaw again tonight, please tell him that Evan says he wants to be the Warlock in D&D. Shaw can have the Paladin slot now. Evan is done with it. He muted me because last night he got heated. I will make sure to pass the information on. But so going back to the beginning of this conversation is when we started this podcast in 2023. You know, Andrew Tate was getting really big. Him and his brother, they had a wizard in the group apparently, who I don't understand how he fits into the dynamic, but supposedly there's a wizard in the group.
They had a wizard in that group?
They had a wizard in the group. As I understand it, there was a big bearded guy that they called
Listen,
the wizard. Or
guys,
something. Oh, hey.
I hate to interrupt. I hate to interrupt. But I have to join in and say, because we're on the precipice. We're on the precipice of a fundamental crossroads.
Uh-huh.
Just know this. You'll know what this means in 7 days.
Damn.
Shaw, are you
we're on the
still here?
precipice. No, he left. He's gone. That was it. We didn't even get to tell him that Evan said hi. That was a drive-by.
Sounds
You
like
know-
you got good news, I suppose. But so back in 2023, it was a little more lighthearted. It was easier to make fun of Andrew Tate. You know, it was easier to make fun of like the whole idea going around back then of like the Sigma male, stuff like that. You know, in 2025, I would say that dynamic has very much changed, and I think most people would agree. Whether, you know, they like the change or they dislike the change, I think people would agree that that change has taken place, and it's much more serious. It's much more dug into kind of the fabric of, you know, the way culture exists here in 2025. And just as an aside, commentary on Shaw's statement here.
We're getting a chatter. A chatter's coming in saying, "What a nonsensical statement! Being on the precipice and being at a crossroads means virtually the same thing. Has this man ever had an intelligent thought?" You know, that's a good point, and we'll get to that. We'll definitely have to cross that bridge when we get there. But that's a good point. Thank you, chatter. Yeah,
so,
I would like to refute your statement.
No, because
there,
I haven't finished. We're still stuck on the background. Because I'm really this was meant to be a lead into something. Is the character of the stuff in 2025 has changed significantly. It's much more, and if you disagree with that premise, we can get there in just a moment.
Yeah, that's what I'm disagreeing with.
But it's a lot more woven into things, and I think as such, given back in 2023, you know, I remember putting out shorts where we would kind of poke fun at the idea, you know, kind of ironically play into it. You know, we would put out clips of, you know, Blue Pill Gamer gets bullied by, you know, Red Pill cool guy or whatever. And I really think that, you know, we're men are lonely, and men, you know, a lot of times don't know what to do with their lives. And I think there could be real value in speaking to people. And, you know, we're just guys. We're, you know, also in our 20s. We don't have everything figured out. But, you know, I would say that, you know, we're people who have things in our lives that make us happy. And that make us feel complete. And things that bring us value. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time, you know, talking about that. And maybe speaking to some of the people out there who, you know, might stand to benefit from that. But okay, now the premise is there. You want to refute it?
I just want to refute the premise that that things were great in 2023 about surrounding the Manosphere. I think you know, we joked about it. I think we joked about it, but I think it was still somewhat serious. It was pretty serious to a lot of people that were affected by it. You know, obviously, if it's newer, it's not going to be you know, as prevalent. And I think you're right. It is more prevalent now. It's more ingrained in the society. Yeah, but I think it was still pretty bad. It was still pretty serious in 2023.
For sure.
I agree with the, you know, we should be talking about you know, what you want to talk about, and you have a serious conversation about advice. You know, I don't think I can give any good advice to young men other than just it's going to be okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure. I think that's something that
it's
always
not
should
the
be
end
said.
of the world.
Is, you know, we have a couple years under our belts. You know, we're still pretty young, but we've kind of had a couple revolutions around the sun. And you know, we all kind of have our own lifestyles and different things that provide us with purpose and meaning. But I think a lot of people get very caught up in the idea of what they're supposed to be and what their relationship to broader society should look like.
I agree with that. I've definitely myself gotten caught up in that.
Absolutely. A lot of people, you know, it can be different things. Some people, it's I need to have a girlfriend, or I need to get married. I need to, you know, maybe it's someone who, let's say, has an interest in cars, right? And they're saying, well, I have to go to school and get my degree in computer science, you know, because I'm supposed to, you know, and I want to be here to tell people, not necessarily. I mean, don't do things just because you're lazy. Don't do things just because you don't want to challenge yourself, or don't avoid doing things or doing the wrong things or whatever, just because, you know, you want to give an FU to the structure, or because you're lazy, you don't want to try, you know, whatever. But also at the same time, you know, take some time to kind of, you know, understand who you are. I remember seeing something recently, and I may try to pull up the article later in the episode if I get the chance. But I saw something recently, and when I was graduating high school and going into college, there was a lot of talk about how the humanities are a waste of time, and everyone needs to learn how to code, and everyone should go into the trades or get into computer science or whatever. And a couple years down the line, maybe about a decade later or so, come to find those fields are getting oversaturated. And what does that mean? That means that all of a sudden there are more people with computer science degrees and are graduating computer science than there are actual jobs available, right? And the humanities, from what I saw, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I believe this is true, they need more people in the humanities. There are more and more jobs hiring in the humanities, especially compared to, say, computer science, right? And so, maybe to someone who, let's say in 2016, their heart was that they wanted to do, let's say, history, but they were told that the humanities weren't valuable and that they need to get a degree in something that made money, even if it's something that they're not personally interested in. So they got a degree in computer science, right? If they had stuck with their heart, and gotten their degree instead in history, then they would actually be better. They wouldn't definitely be better off, but there's a real argument that may have been the right thing for that person to do.
You know what? Here's my take on that. Can I give my take on that?
Absolutely.
My take on that is you have to think about what's the purpose of higher education. What's the purpose of university? And people I know our co-host who currently on the precipice of something, but can't be here tonight. Our co-host, I know what he would say to get a job, right? It's to get a job. And I disagree with that. I disagree with that notion. That I disagree with the notion that you should be living to work. Really, that's the. If you go to higher education just to be able to get a job, you're treating university as a trade school. And if that's your take, you know what? Go to trade school. Get a trade. If you want to do a trade, fine. If you don't care, if you just want to do something with your hands and get a trade, get a trade. Nobody's stopping you. But if you want to go to university, if you want to go to college, if you want to get a college education, university degree, the point of a university degree is to learn, what are you learning about? You're learning how to learn. It's
right.
Education to understand how to be educated, which is kind of meta. But that's really what a university degree is all about. It's learning to be curious. It's getting it's dipping your toes in the waters of understanding how to understand. And if you take it that, how do you understand how to understand? Well, what are the different degrees? What's the point of all the different degrees? Well, that's just learning how to learn via a different subject matter. So I'm going to learn how to learn in the context of history. I'm going to learn how to learn using history as my thing, or I'm going to learn how to learn using philosophy as my thing, or I'm going to learn how to learn using human psychology as my medium. That's what I did. I learned how to learn. My degree was computational, but it was also very psychological. I learned all about human psychology, and I learned how to learn. I learned how to read certain types of articles, and I learned how to come up with critical thinking and that sort of thing. And that's what university is all about. And if you think about it that way, that's powerful. That is powerful because it's agnostic of discipline. You learn a discipline, but you're learning how to learn a discipline. And that in and of itself is agnostic of discipline, because now I know how to be critical. I know how to learn.
And just to simplify, in case someone's listening and they don't know what you mean by agnostic, is you're saying, separate from the discipline itself, the actual means
indifferent. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I learn. Right. I know how to learn. It doesn't matter that I learned psychology in university. I know what I learned was how to learn. So now I can just learn something else easily because I have the skills to learn. And so, we talk about, maybe computer science is not doing so great. Well, if all you know how to do is code, and you don't know how to, if you never learned how to learn, you just learned how to code, you're not gonna make it, because you're not gonna be able to learn a different skill. I think about, you think about these people, I think about, back 10 years ago, right, when I was in college, there's a big push of learn to code for the coal miners, right? People in West Virginia and Appalachians,
Right, exactly. Yeah.
in Ohio.
Just to do a quick pause before you make that full point. Evan chimed in the chat and said, "It doesn't matter that I learned psychology in university. Realist things said on this podcast." Just a little oomph to keep you going. But yes, talking about the people who were told to learn to code.
Learn to code. Damn. Evan really hit me there. The learn to code stuff. All these people, these Ohio coal miners. You get these coding boot camps and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And
they. But keep going.
The thing I think is the reason that those all failed, right? And that became a big meme almost of like
right.
they're just telling coal miners to learn to code kind of thing. And part of that I think is kind of mean, because it was like, oh, you kind of expect coal miners to be too dumb. What do you think, coal miners are too dumb to be able to learn? But it's not because they're not smart enough to learn the material. I think it's that they weren't smart enough or driven enough to learn how to learn. So coal miners, like the people who didn't make it in these coal mining, that didn't try the boot camp or that maligned it, they a lot of them, they were like, oh, I was a coal miner, and my father was a coal miner, my grandfather was a coal miner. I'm a coal miner. That's who I am. That's my identity. They identified as their labor.
It was very familial, yeah.
But more so is that it was not just familiar, it was who they were. Their identity was based around their labor.
Family identity too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Their labor was the most important aspect. I am a coal miner. I'm not something else. I am a coal miner. If your identity is based around your labor, you are not going to make it in modern society. Because labor, businesses in our modern capitalist society does not care about people. Unless you're a freelancer. I mean, even if you are a freelancer, I mean, what you do, your labor,
I was testing something.
Your skills, your labor is not it doesn't matter. I mean, skills come and go. I mean, think about even you could be the best, loom. You think about all the women back in the day who would run hand looms,
mm-hmm.
and make clothing or make yarn by running a hand loom. Well, once the Industrial Revolution came through, that went away. Think about 100 years ago.
I'm about to finish Capital Volume 1 right now by Karl Marx, and there's a good portion of the book that's actually dedicated to exactly that, as the Industrial Revolution hit, Germany.
So what you have to think about is if you want to make it in society, things change. People lose their jobs. You lose your job. You lose your career. You have to be able to pivot. You have to know how to learn how to start again, and how to start a new life, and how to kind of be okay with making drastic changes, and accepting being a new person.
Right, and if I could add to that, something that I wanted to touch on, and I think you actually did a good job getting us there. And I do, there's another section of this that I want to touch on a little bit later as well. But just specifically on the education point is, I think, listen, if you're a young guy out there, and you're trying to understand who you are, and you have just a pet curiosity in whatever topic, be it history, economics, computers, we are in a true golden moment. We don't know if it's an age yet. Things could always change. Information can always get more restricted. So don't take it for granted. But we are in a golden moment for learning and access to information. Not only, are there still libraries, and I don't know, I would suppose just about every town, maybe not every town, but I would assume just about. And books are great. People don't put enough people don't give enough credit to books for really teaching you stuff, as self-contained 300, 600, 800 pages or whatever, and all of a sudden you know a lot more than you knew going into it. But libraries are great. There's a lot of great content on YouTube, free content, where you can learn about some of my smartest friends, and some of them went on to do some really impressive stuff with their lives. Started by learning computer science off of YouTube when they're like 12 years old. All of a sudden, 15 years later or whatever, they have, had a lot of success in their adult lives. And a lot of it's grounded off that information they learned then. And it doesn't matter if you're, that young. You can still pick these things up when you're 20, maybe even 30. So much of it comes back to what Bobby was saying a moment ago about it, being the main thing is that you learn how to learn. And if you learn how to learn, then you can learn anything.
If there's breath in your lungs, it's not too late. If there's breath in your lungs, it's not too late.
Right. And so there's things like, in a second here, I'm going to have to take a brief little detour to do something. Actually give me 1 second. And so, there's a lot of great resources online. And if you ever have trouble figuring out, what resources are available for a topic, I have my criticisms of AI. But, you can always ask it, hey, if I want to learn about this, what are the best resources online for this? And I've often found, or the best resources in general, it's often found that some of the best resources out there to learn stuff are, books, whether you're buying the books, whether you're renting them from the library. I find that audiobooks are a very critically undervalued. I found that audiobooks are a very critically undervalued resource. So long as what you're learning isn't too number dense and it's more, let's say, qualitative, it's more dependent on concepts and stuff like that, or it's light enough math to where, you don't need to see a bunch of equations in your face. It's something to where if you're, say, depending on what you do in a day, you have an hour-long commute there and back to your job or to school or whatever, to see family, if you ride your bike, if you're doing chores. All of a sudden, within, a couple months, if you just pop it in every now and then an audiobook, you can learn so much information while you're doing something else, and you really do retain it. But yeah.
I've in terms of the number dense, I've listened to an audiobook that was very number dense, and it was really hard because you just every 5 minutes it was just like, and the rate of this was 83% in the following 7 cities, and it would just list cities, and the rate of this was 89% in the following 7 cities. A little hard when it's number dense, but yeah.
Just to finish off the list of resources real quick is there's audiobooks, there's YouTube series, there's tons of free full courses with lectures available out there. There's a lot of great websites, there's a lot of great resources, and all that stopping you today from learning just about anything you want is the desire to go find it. And to that, it's incumbent on you to actually actively, search these things. But so long as you are willing to learn, and you're willing to learn how to learn, you can learn just about anything nowadays. And anyways.
And I just to add on to that, I have one more resource, one more action item, and then pressing home your point. If you don't have a library card, you gotta go. I don't care if you're an American citizen, right? If you live in the United States, I shouldn't say if you're an American citizen. If you live in the United States, that's what I mean by that. If you're in America right now, and you don't have a library card, I don't care if you're from Paducah, Missouri, or Timbuktu,
Louisiana.
Louisiana. Every community from Manhattan, New York to Manhattan, Kansas is going to have a library system, a library card, at least one that you're eligible for. Sign up for a library card. And here's the best part. Here's the best part. A lot of library cards you can sign up for online. Maybe not a lot, but there's a decent amount of library cards you can sign up for online. even if the local library branch is 3 hours away, if you can sign up online, it's perfect. You get this thing. It's called Libby. Have you used Libby?
I think I've heard of it, but
Libby.
Yeah.
Libby by Overdrive. Libby is basically it's this service that is that a lot of libraries use in the United States.
Is it the audiobook one?
It's the ebook and audiobook.
Yeah, I think one of my friends
audiobooks.
Has used it.
They do ebooks and audiobooks, and they it allows you to link as many library cards as you have to that thing, and you can rent ebooks. And so you don't even have to leave your house. You have it on your phone. You can have it on your laptop. You can read your ebooks, and they have magazines too. And the best part is again, if you live in any sort of city, you're probably going to have access to at least one, maybe two or multiple library systems. Where I live, I have access to I live and work and worship all in the same city, in the same county. So I only have access to one library, but I know people who live in the next county over and come to work here, so they have access to two. Plus, if certain states, like if you live in New York State, anyone who lives in the state of New York has access, can sign up for a New York Public Library card, even if you've never been to New York City. If you live in New York State, you can get access to New York Public Library card, and now you have access to New York Public Library. That's a pretty big library. That's a pretty powerful library. So that's what I'll say is as a specific step you can do. Sounds like we got Shaw here, and before let me just before we introduce Shaw, I just wanna drive home Travis, your point. I think the most important advice to young men is you have to be curious. I think the most important trait anybody can have is curiosity. Right? If you're not curious, you're not gonna make it. You're not gonna have a fulfilling life, in my opinion. You got to be curious. You got to wanna get out there and learn and understand new things and experience new things.
To whoever may hear this, you don't have to make yourself curious about something that you have no interest in. Find something you're interested in, though. Find something that sounds interesting to you and harness that curiosity. And I can guarantee you, as you spend time on whatever that is, you're going to become curious about more things, because everything connects. Every topic out there is part of a big web of knowledge. It all connects. But you have to find a way to spark that initial curiosity if you don't have it already.
Shaw, are you here for the podcast?
I'm here for the podcast.
Can we welcome Shaw in here real quick?
Oh yeah, let's get
welcome Shaw.
There we go. It took a couple.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I was unfortunately beckoned away to do something of an urgent status, but now I'm here. I was beckoned to do something of an urgent status, so now I'm here. I just want to say my message to men is, as with being curious, is always question authority. Don't ever take no for an answer.
Always think for yourself. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Always think for yourself. Never let the man tell you what to do. But first and foremost, be open. Be ready to take criticism. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Fail that class, man. Talk to that girl. Use the bathroom without putting toilet paper on the seat before you sit down on it. I mean, these are risks you have to take as a man.
And before we get too far into things, because I want to get to the social side of it too. We did get a very kind chatter earlier. I don't know if you're still in the chat. But they said, if you see Shaw again tonight, please tell him that Evan says he wants to be the warlock in D&D. Shaw can have his paladin slot now. Evan is done with it. That does not ring a bell at all. I don't play tabletop games. With you? I think that was a trolly-woly. Also, when I put up the short earlier of telling people to come check us out, someone commented, "What is Jared Goff doing?" Who is Jared Goff?
He's the quarterback of the Detroit Lions.
Do I look like him or something?
Yeah, you kind of look a little bit like Jared Goff.
All right. I looked him up. I'll take that as a compliment.
There was this guy I worked with. I'm not gonna name where or what state or where I worked with, but there's this guy I worked with who looked exactly like Travis, and I sent Travis a picture of him, and it was uncanny how similar that they looked in stature and build, and how similar that they spoke. And this guy, he was a cool dude, and it was just so uncanny. And I worked with this guy. And Travis still denies it to this day, but I'm not going to put a picture up of this guy because he respects his privacy. But oh man, it was like a 1-to-1.
So I want to get to the social aspect of things, and I want to kick it off by saying, how do you guys feel about replacing all your friends with AI?
Replacing all your friends with AI?
Yeah, just engage me in this hypothetical. How would you guys feel if you replaced? How do you guys feel about the idea of replacing all your friends with AI? Or how would you feel if someone else replaced all their friends with AI? How does that? How would you feel?
I'm not gonna lie, I would feel a little bit bummed out for that person or individual, because having human empathy and human interaction is very important to our being. We're not isolated creatures. We're not wired to be isolated. So seeing someone using essentially electricity as their form of communication, and like just being on a cell phone all day or whatever it is, it's pretty sad. I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. Everybody needs real humans.
And so, before we get into why I'm asking, Bobby, do you have any thoughts on the matter? How does that make you feel? Would you do it?
I would not.
Bless you.
Excuse me.
So,
Excuse me.
bless you. There's something I've been seeing going around. A lot of articles. I don't have a stat on it or anything. I don't know if there are stats on it. Some of these articles are very sad. And some of them, are more bewildering than anything else. But, especially seemingly over the past year or so, there seems to be a real trend in people are already lonely. A lot of people out there, very lonely. They don't have friends. Or if they do, they don't get together very often. Whatever, And a lot of people have been turning towards AI as a companion. And there are many examples of this. I saw one recently that was supposedly, this guy who was married, he started talking to AI so much that he thought that the AI was almost like this entity, this godlike entity, that he was able to interface with through AI, that this was the medium for him to interface with some sort of deity of some sort. And it got so bad that I think his wife would constantly, if I remember correctly, question him about it, and say, this isn't serious. What are you doing? And I think eventually he may have ended the relationship with her. They got a divorce over it. A lot of people, are saying that, while I was trying to find an article on this, I was finding Reddit posts of people saying, I think that AI makes a better friend than humans ever could. And you're seeing the proliferation of the sentiment of AI replacing real people in our social situations. Mark Zuckerberg, there was a clip of him maybe about a week ago. No, it was
like Mark Zuckerberg. Haha.
And in it, he was talking about how people have slots in their life for 18 friends or whatever it is. Most people only have 2 or 3 or whatever it was. And he was basically saying, we want AI to fill in those gaps. And they're introducing AI profiles to, I know for sure Instagram, I think Facebook as well, that are meant to just introduce a sense of community through these fake people who are just AI. And we're in a real crisis moment right now with this, where people are lonely. And a lot of people are moving towards AI to replace those friendships. And I mean, I think we can all sit here and agree that you shouldn't do that. AI is not going to replace your friends. Maybe there's a way to tactically use it as a companion of some sort, but you still need social connection. And the next thing I wanted to get to was how people can make social connections. And if you guys are okay, I'm just going to start with something for me. Is we live in a really interesting age that is unlike any other, where, some of us have friends that people have the ability to have friends that maybe they've never met in real life, or they met through the internet. Like you guys, I know you guys through the internet, and we're tight, we're cool. I also have a lot of real life friends that I love and cherish very much. And so often you see this idea of, what is it called? A third place, like an independent place for people to meet and hang out. So much of this kind of comes around, especially as I get older. I notice that people who get lonelier tend to not have communities, and they might not know where to seek communities. And one thing I found, and for everyone this is going to be different. Some people might be joining a book club. Some people might be doing community service. For some people, that's going to be where they find community, and they find real community in it. But there are a lot of third places out there, just so long as you're willing to search for them, and you're willing to commit, and you're willing to put yourself out there. Something I think is very valuable, and I want to, put out there in case anyone's interested, is Magic the Gathering. Check your local area. See if there are any magic shops around. It's one of these places that's had real resilience to the changing tides of our time. And you can go out there. They have these things called Friday Night Magic, and you can typically go. People will be playing games or whatever. And you can suck, and you can just be there to meet people and hang out. But it's this thing that really attracts people of all ages. Some people, are very social people. Some people that are less so. And the main thing is it's a hub for people to communicate. And for anyone out there, who might be lonely, definitely check out Magic. And there's a way for you to get into it online too. And I would definitely encourage you, if you do, is to then bring that into the real world if you're looking for community. I mean, what advice do you guys have for people with searching for community? And in just a moment, I'll let you know when I do, but I'll have to step away for a second. You guys just keep talking. But anyways,
this is a struggle. This is a struggle. It's definitely a struggle. I felt myself. I saw a tweet. Let me. I'm gonna defer to Sha while I pull up some material here. Sha, do you looks like Sha is
he's thinking. He's got his thinking cap on.
He's thinking. He's got his thinking cap on.
You have to do it without him.
I guess I will.
Sorry. I was pulling up some media here. I think these third places come predominantly in hobbies, and not particularly,
for sure,
I mean, crazy hobbies, but like very simple, like joining a running club. A lot of people garner a lot of friendships through like a running club, or just fitness in general, like going to a gym. And these relationships, the problem is they take time to garner, and it takes effort on your part. And a lot of people, if they're shy and they're lonely, it takes a second to get out of their shell. It may be better to go to a more community-based activity. Maybe something like a Zumba class or something, you know what I mean? Where the instructor is kind of in your face, telling people to get along, jump in with a partner, stuff like that. I know me personally, I found those communities within school, so I have a very tight-knit group of friends.
And that's a good point. If you're someone who's young and in school, when you're looking for social connection, do it through your school. There's a lot of resources. It's makes you uncomfortable, but you should do it if you need community.
Most people actually go out of their way to make communities and talk to new people and all that good stuff. So I mean, I've noticed that. I've been fortunately enough in a position where I haven't needed to use those resources. I have enough friends outside of my inner school community. But I do also have a lot of friends within that school community, and I communicate with them on a semi-regular basis. Like, yo, what's good? How you doing? And that's the biggest thing. It takes effort. No one's going to be a good friend to you if you're not a good friend to them. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up If someone's always the first person calling and you never call them back, or you wait for people to reach out to you and make plans, and listen, man, no one's gonna put that much effort into you. Everyone's busy with their own lives. They need that mutual connection. And eventually, and there's things there too, like friendships will end. Friendships aren't a forever thing. I was amazingly friends with a lot of people in high school, and then as soon as COVID happened, a lot of them fizzled out. But I've seen these people in public, and we've talked, been friendly, had like an hour and a half convo, hung out. But we also understand you're in different stages of life now and doing different things. It's hard to make time for people that are in a completely different world from you. And when you find that similarity in worlds together,
I want to get back to that later because you raised a good point. But keep going.
Yeah. Like I said, friendships evolve a lot of times. I especially within at least the male dynamic I've seen. Recently, like one of my good friends from high school was hit by a bus.
Oh wow.
So he posted on Instagram like, "Yo, I'm in the hospital. This shit is crazy. I got hit by a bus." And I reached out to him, and we didn't have a huge conversation. It was like, "Yo, bro, like, I'm sorry that happened to you. I know you'll get better. You'll be fine. Speedy recovery and all that." And he hit me back up like, "Hey,
sorry,
thank you." You know what I mean?
Didn't mean to do that. I was dragging.
Yeah, whatever. But he was like, "Yeah, Speedy was like, yo, bro, thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate you reaching out and everything." And that was that. And I know if I ever see him, we'll talk it up or whatever it is. We'll catch up. But he's hustling, bro. Like, he's working nights, doing his thing. He's a little bit more active on social media. I don't really tell people what I do on social media. But I'm hoping the best for the guy, even though it's fizzled out. We haven't spoken a full conversation in maybe like 5 years or something like that.
I think that's important. I think it's important to understand that sometimes, friendships they go, but they don't. They go into lulls, but doesn't mean you can't. You're not still friends. It doesn't mean people don't care. I pulled up a tweet.
I'm gonna step away for a minute. You guys keep talking.
Pulled up a tweet that I wanna read real quick, and it says, "As a 46-year-old, I can offer this perspective. 25 years ago, you didn't have to try to meet people. You just did. Indeed, it was being a loner that took some effort. I remember making up excuses to get out of social engagements. If you weren't social, people took offense. Now, the reverse is the case. The default is to be alone. You have to make an effort to meet people. You risk offending people by not being antisocial, but being social. Sociality is not something you have to effortfully pursue or earn." So I think now it's different, which is sad. That things are different. That you do have to be more. In order to be a part of a community, you actually have to put effort. I realized, last year, pretty heavily, or a couple of years, more last year than anything, that if you don't do things, things don't happen. And that's a pretty powerful thing to think about, that like stuff doesn't just happen. You actually have to do things, otherwise things don't happen. And that's something I'm dealing with, something I'm working through.
Yeah, and to put it in perspective, like I have a couple friends, or this would be my newest group of friends we met recently through a mutual friend of ours. And we're talking, we're hanging out, we're trying to plan something, and no one except me and my original friend are like trying to like actually plan out anything. We're trying to do a little day trip, go fishing, all that good stuff. And I'm like, "Yo, like this date, let's do it. And then he tells me, my friends will be, "Yeah, let's do it." We send it in the group chat, no one responds. We FaceTime somebody, like, "Yeah, bro, I'll think about it. I don't know what I'm be doing then." This guy doesn't have a job, isn't going to school, no family business. We're only asking for the guy's company. The most he'll have to do is buy a fishing rod, which is like sub $50. Like, dude, that's all you gotta do. It ain't expensive. And it's like, you don't have to drive anywhere or anything. Like, either me or him are gonna drive up to the lake that we go to or whatever. And it's so hard to get these people to sometimes respond to do something. And I really wonder what it is they sit and do all day. I really wonder.
Yeah.
But that's either here nor there. But that's what I'm saying. You got to put an effort in, and then eventually I have seen people, and I've known people too that have put in so much effort to keep relationships going, and it's just the people that are so like boring that don't ever want to do anything. That leads to like the fizzling out of friendships. But yeah, I mean that's what I've noticed. I'm very content with my setting of friends at the moment. I'm happy to meet new people and work with new people and become friendly with new people. My life's all right so far. I don't know. Like even right now, I'm kind of seeing it. Like a lot of the friends I have in school right now, due to college, I may not be friends with within 3 years because our lives are just going to shift. So it's like it's going to be hard to keep in touch with people, especially if they're not living next to you. That's fucking hard. When your initial friendship was based off school. Yeah, that's my thoughts. I don't know. What do you feel, Bobby?
I agree. You know, it's hard to think, but you really got to put an effort in life to live the best life. It's pretty easy to do nothing. I know a bunch of people that I work with that just kind of they just go about their day, they go about their life. And it was hard. I mean, I guess maybe it was something that broke me a little bit because I became an adult. You know, I graduated college right before the pandemic, and so I had about a year maybe of being able to live like pre-pandemic adult life. So I started off doing a lot of stuff, especially through work. Having that community, and then the pandemic hit, and it became just locking down and talking to my college buddies and stuff, and maybe some new friends that I'd met through work. But it was very lonely for that, and then that kind of that kind of stuck me for a little bit, and I kind of stayed with that for a while.
Yeah, and
No, we had a blast. Calm down. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fucking fun.
2020 was kind of fun, yeah.
Yeah, kind of 2020 was pretty fun.
Dude, I'm not gonna mention what we did in Discord, but yeah, what we did was a lot of fun. So much fun. We still reminisce about it from time to time. It was fucking fun.
COVID was an interesting era, right? Because I remember the moment it felt like it was gonna last forever, for one. But there was a lot to be upset about. There were a lot of people dying. There were a lot of people getting sick. There was a lot of darkness in the moment. And a lot of us, I think, same for you guys as it was for me. You weren't seeing friends as much. The way you kind of interacted with the world changed significantly, and it really took a long time for things to kind of return to something that resembled the pre-pandemic. But at the same time, there was this sense of togetherness. And I remember there was a closeness that, it wasn't necessarily more close than maybe other times in my life, but it was definitely unique in its shape and feel. And I think, I know it was the case for us. I don't know how true it is for other people, but there was a real, we really made the most of the moment, taking, what was handed to us and really trying to do the best that we can with it. And I think there was just something very special about that moment. It's something to look back on fondly, I think. Was that articulate at all?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
You were saying something, Bobby, when I got back, and I can't remember if this is what I wanted to put a pin in with Shaw. But yeah, on top of the social stuff, I think there's a real importance in being able to be happy on your own. That doesn't necessarily mean you want to be a loner. It doesn't necessarily mean, you want to be lonely. A lot of people, sometimes look at me and they think, oh, well, he has kind of odd social tendencies, is it, maybe something's off with him or whatever. But I think me personally, I've really developed a good sense of self. And so for people too, you want to make social connections. You want to try and find a way to be social with people, whether that be through groups, friends, family, whatever it may be. One-off encounters, bars, however it may be. But you also want to develop a strong sense of self, and you want to be able to be alone and be happy being alone, and have something to do when you're alone and have a real purpose. And I think through those moments in particular, when you're by yourself and you're trying to understand who you are and what you should be doing at a given moment, I think those are some of the best moments to kind of forge a sense of self and a real sense of purpose.
Yeah, I agree. If you're not happy with yourself as a person and who you are, it's very tough to be happy with other people in general. Yeah, I agree with that. I wouldn't even necessarily say sense of self, 100%. I would more say just like self-confidence in general. A little bit of self-confidence goes a long way. Because not everyone's perfect. Everyone knows not everyone's perfect.
Yeah.
The only perfect guy I know is named DeMarco Fleming. And I'll never reach his level.
Last time.
Yeah.
I felt bad when I was up on that one clip. It's because I had to take out all the DeMarco Fleming parts because I was trying to fit everything into 60 seconds and I was like, I can't make this work. I'm trying to make this work. I can't fit this in anywhere and have enough context for people to have any idea what was being said there.
No, yeah, it's okay. Only a certain few will understand DeMarco Fleming. Yeah, but but yeah, I mean, it's growing as a person, being open to new things, being open to being the weird one. It's all things you got to do and be open with. And oversharing. Sometimes oversharing is what leads to everyone sharing a little bit about themselves.
Yeah.
Like I know specifically for computer science people, they hate talking. Oh yeah. Man. Everyone will have done horrible on a test, but no one's ready to share their grade. I'm the first one to go like, yo, I got a 37 on that, bro. They're like, no, bro, I did real similar. They won't say their exact grade. Right. They will get the idea of like, yo, like this guy did bad too. And then they'll be like, yo, for real. And then that's where that conversation starts, where it's like, you know what? You got to be open to sharing how bad you did. You got to be open to sharing parts of yourself.
And I've been in a lot of those situations too, where I would do exactly what you're saying, and it turns out, oh, everyone got a higher grade than me. Whoops. But you do it enough times, and you feel comfortable doing that. It's just about doing it once or twice, and then all of a sudden you're able to do exactly what you're talking about.
It's something really simple that I think a lot of people have a tough time undertaking.
Absolutely.
It's called not caring.
Yeah.
To me, it has very little to zero effect on me, on how you think I did, or if you did better than me, because everyone is different. Everyone has a different situation. Everyone has a different thing going on. There are kids I speak to on a near daily basis in school, about school. The only thing they do is school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They don't have a job. They don't have family obligations. They go to school. They go home, they study. Go to school, go home, study. Or go to school, study at school, go home. Whatever.
But by the way, just to make
that's
it quick,
all they do. And they get A's and B's. I'm like, swell. Very well. How many classes do they take that are computer science? 2, maybe 3.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm out here taking 5 computer science and math classes.
Right.
Working fucking full time. And I still manage to get C's in most of my courses.
And a note to the people out there who are maybe in college or whatever, and you are that kind of person where all you do is school all day, get a hobby. And I don't say that to be mean. I say because I really think it would benefit your life. Is you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, as people say, and you want to diversify your life. You want to get more experiences.
You got to be interesting.
You got to get interested in other things.
If you do that. I will say though. The people, to the C's get degrees people, like Shaw here. I I recently applied for a job, and I got an interview. I got a recruiter hit me up.
The one you're
Sean
talking
knows
about,
what
right?
job. Chad knows what job I'm talking. Yeah, you both know what job I'm talking
Yeah.
about. That job, the recruiter specifically asked me what my GPA was. He was like, "These guys, they're pretty particular. You know, you got to make sure you have a good enough GPA." I'm like, "Yeah, I got this." He's like, "Yeah, okay. As long as you weren't getting like C's and D's, you're good." So, you know, if you want a good job, this was for a very high-paying job, a good job. So sometimes they do care, but a lot of times they don't really care that much. The satisfaction I got out of it was the personal satisfaction. I told myself when I was in these higher classes, this is how I got through. I was in a couple of graduate classes. I was taking a graduate psychology class my last semester in college, and it was very difficult.
Did you
I got
your
in
degree
because
psychology, just by the way?
no, I got my degree in something else, but it was very psychology dependent. It was
I
basically
think you
a
told me
concentration.
before. Right.
So it was a graduate psychology class. It was called Graduate Cognition, and I got in because the professor liked me. I liked the professor, and she basically was like, "You should take this class. Like this'll count for, you know, part of your psychology concentration for your degree. Like this'll count, and I think you can take it. Like I think you would be good in it. But just know it's a graduate cognition. Like this is a graduate level class. This is a master's level class. Like I'm going to expect like a lot out of you because it's the master's level." And I took that class very seriously, and it was a lot of work. I remember my final paper, the final project, was you had to do basically a research project. It was a research proposal. So you had to come up with basically the beginning part of a research paper, everything up until actually performing the experiment and that sort of stuff. So I had to like, you know, actually come up with the exact equipment and how I would run the experiment and all that sort of stuff, and then come up
thesis, all that good stuff, scientific
thesis,
method.
all the stuff around it, like, you know, all the background, 20 sources. You had to have at least 20 sources, and it had to be at least 20 pages long. It was very long, and it took me a month. It was a month of work for that one paper, and the whole time I'm doing it, this is what I said to myself to get through this class as well as other classes, because I obviously had other classes too. This is what I said to myself. I said, I want to do this. I told myself, I want to do this. I signed up for this class. This is, at this point, this is a class I want to take. This is not like, you know, a gen ed that I have to take. This is not a class I have to take. I want to do this class. I am enjoying this because this is something that I wanted to do. I wanted to do this. And that actually worked.
Yeah.
It worked because I said to myself, I framed it as like, you know, this is something I wanted to do. Like I chose this major. I chose where I am. It's not that I have to do this. It's not that, you know, I'm not. It's like I chose that I wanted to do this, and that worked. That actually helped. And I got through it, and I got a decent grade on it.
Excuse me.
You know, I have a tough time doing that because I don't want to do any of that. And my heart and soul and my brain and my mind just tells me every day that I don't want to be doing this, but I'm stuck doing this. Yeah.
Perseverance is a big deal too. You know, being able to do stuff you don't want to do. Well, unless you guys have anything else to add to this particular topic here, I want to summarize, and you guys can correct my summarization if anything you think is an incorrect takeaway, or if you want to add anything. But to the young men out there, and if you're watching this as a short or a clip or whatever, you should go watch the whole thing and subscribe and like while you're at it. We could always use more.
Yolo Braintrust.
The Yolo Braintrust.
3 YOLOs, 1 Braintrust.
But so the Yolo Braintrust got together, and we're doing what Braintrusts do, and we've spent a good chunk of this episode talking to the men, talking about what it's like to, you know, grow up in this modern age, and particularly, you know, becoming an adult, accepting the roles of being an adult. And you know, if you're a young man out there, there's a lot to be concerned about. You know, I think it's totally understandable that a lot of people are scared. It's a very unprecedented time in a lot of ways. but maybe the most important thing first is the social thing. Is if you're a young man and you're struggling socially, or you feel like you're not getting the social interaction that you like, join a group, find a group, whether that be if you're in school, finding a group at your school, or finding a hobby. For me, it's always been Magic the Gathering. Don't be afraid to make friends, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. It's tough at first, but you'll gain the ability to do it as you do it. Sometimes it just takes a couple goes. And if you embarrass yourself once, then you're less likely to embarrass yourself again, either because you get better or you come to find some value in embarrassing yourself, which is how I do it. I've become very comfortable with embarrassing myself over the years. But really, find hobbies, find clubs, and most importantly is if you have people in your life that you care about, value them, care about them, value them. Anyone you have, I say anyone in my life that I have, I'm lucky to have, and that includes the other guys in the Braintrust here. And for education, this is a very interesting moment we're in, where information is probably almost definitely more accessible than it ever has been. And you have so many ways of learning about things that you either want to learn about or things that you probably should learn about to get a job or whatever. Whether those things be, more old-fashioned ways, such as going to the library. Get a library card. It doesn't hurt to get a library card. And once you have it,
don't go to the library.
Well,
don't go to the library.
All right.
The only people that go to libraries are hoarders.
Well, Bobby here might disagree with you. You can go to the library. I
can't
personally
tell you the amount of times I went to my public library to study for the SAT when I was in high school, and I saw two vehicles that were hoarder vehicles, and I was like, that's what their car looks like. You think their fucking house looks like. And you know why? It's because it's a public library. It's a certain, put it simply, a certain type of individual goes to the library.
Well, you could audience, you could be the cool kind of guy that goes to the library, but engage yourself, learn how to learn, and learn while you're at it. There is only so much time you have on this planet, and I think learning is always one of the most valuable things you can do. I personally like audiobooks because you can do them while you do other stuff, and you can gain a lot more knowledge than maybe you realized that you could. There's tons of free lecture series on YouTube now. There are websites if you ever need to learn about something specific, or if you have a question or whatever. Just about anything you want to learn. Maybe not everything, but a lot of things that if you have an interest in learning, you have the resources at your computer and in your town to do it. With not necessarily by having to take a full college course to say learn classical guitar, right? For me, self-taught guitar. I've learned a lot about history, economics, stuff like that. Just sheerly through the interest. And I encourage people to learn how to learn and to find that hunger to learn. And the third thing is develop a sense of self, because you're not always going to be around people. You're not always going to be in a great mood. But if you can develop a sense of who you are, not necessarily who you want to be, although that can help, but a sense of who you are, and understanding that and developing a positive sense of that, that can carry you through a lot of hardship. That can carry you through a lot of dull moments. That, I think, heightens the high moments. Did you guys have anything that, you wanted to add?
Nope.
All right.
To put it briefly.
Sure.
It's gonna sound really hard. But be a man.
Be a man.
No one's telling you to go out and hunt and someone come back to gather, but hey, be a man.
Be a man. And that looks different for everyone, but, be a man.
And everyone has their own journey in becoming a man. Exactly. So don't think you're ahead or you're behind.
Even Milan became a man.
Go with the flow. Melania?
Milan. People are talking about a young man in the Chinese army who seems to have some feminine features. He's gone and he's defeated the Huns. But people are saying that he might not be a man after all. What's going on? The Chinese army
listen,
was
while you
defeated
say
by
that,
a young
I'm,
woman pretending to be a man.
I'm booting up this game called Mini Ninjas. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this game called Mini Ninjas.
Yeah, I have not.
But it's pretty cool. Oh, and I was gonna say, if there's one goal I could give to every man reading or listening right now, play the game Drown God: The Conspiracy of the Ages. It'll help you unlock 40,000 years of lies.
Wow. That's something that I haven't even heard of. Maybe I need to look into that.
Yeah, look into it.
Let's see here. Let me just. Oh, dude. Man. But I will say one last thing is I think audiobooks are a very vastly underrated form of learning. Not only are there services out there, I won't say them, to where, you know, you get free credits every month. There's a lot of audiobooks that are uploaded to YouTube. But it's something to where, you know, as people, we always have access to the internet.
Using FreeTube.
We can always listen to stuff. You know, I ride my bike a lot. You know, if I'm in my car, if I'm doing chores, just put in an audiobook. You'd be surprised at how much you can learn just by having that. And, you know, you may not capture everything, but the point is to something's better than nothing. And you end up learning quite a bit. But, you know, maybe, unless you guys had a final topic for tonight, I wanted to look up something before we started. I didn't get the chance. But as you guys remember, we did a joke probably around 2 years ago, almost to the date. We called it "We Are the World" coin, where I played that dumb MIDI track of "We Are the World." And we pretended and AI was not where it's at today. You know, so we were kind of imagining, to some extent, technology that didn't exist. You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. It turned into, like, really bad quality for a second, like you're, like, in a car accident or something.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
But, you know, we pretended we were, like, AI generated, like, dead celebrities. I don't think the technology was there when we did that. There was definitely not AI video. There wasn't Sora and all that stuff yet. So we were kind of hacking it together. And they were all, you know, being generated to kind of shill this non-existent coin. And now there's a thing called WorldCoin. And I don't know. I wish I had more time to look into it. But is it basically the joke we were doing? Bobby, you got to know what WorldCoin is, right?
Yes, yeah, it totally is the joke we're doing.
It is the joke?
Yeah, we gotta wrap this up, by the way. I gotta get...
Yeah, I was gonna say, and that's just the one last thing, just to kind of touch on something that wasn't part of the min stuff. Wow. I wonder if it's too late for me to post the We Are the World coin clip.
It is too late.
Alright, well, that's just the way it goes sometimes.
Listen, we'll do it again next time. All right.
You know what they say.
Everything's computer. That's beautiful. Wow.
And listen, if you feel so bad about not being able to do it today, you could cry about it. And you know, I won't be a shoulder you can lean on to cry, but you can cry about it. I'm just letting you know. And that's the one thing about some friends, actually. You gotta have friends that'll call you out on your bullshit. You gotta know when you're wrong.
I gotta dip.
Okay, so ending the podcast, Bobby, any last words?
Nope, no last words. Gotta dip.
All right.
See you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.